Some of the most beautiful and captivating gemstones in history have tragic origins. Discovered by unfortunate victims of fate or stolen from ancient artifacts, these glimmering gems are said to become cursed as a result of their journey through the world. Here are history's most cursed gems. The story of the Bahia Emerald is truly bizarre. Those who have gotten tangled in its web swear the stone came right from hell. The emerald is actually a conglomerate. It's several emeralds stuck together in another kind of rock called a black schist. This allegedly cursed emerald sat in the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department vault for years, and no one knew if it was worth a few $100 or, as some said, $925 million. The emerald was unearthed in 2001 and bounced from owner to owner for a while. Person after person seemed to fall victim to its charms and made some insane sacrifices to try to own it. Some made bad business deals. One man staged his own kidnapping. Another claimed to have a bill of sale, but it had been destroyed when his house burned down. At one point, the Bahia Emerald was submerged in the floodwaters of Hurricane Katrina. It wasn't until 2015 that California courts decided who owned the emerald. There were 10 people, 3 corporations, and the government of Brazil all claiming rights to the gem. Ultimately, one of the companies prevailed in their efforts to possess it. Most will be familiar with the Black Prince's ruby, even if the name's not familiar. It's the big red stone on Britain's imperial state crown. The popular gem and mineral website, the Arkenstone, says that it was cursed since as far back as 1362. That's when Abu Sa'ed, the Sultan of Granada, arranged to meet with King Pedro the Cruel of Castile. Castile had been marching through Granada. Abu Sa'ed was hoping for peace. What he found was murder. King Pedro killed the Sultan and his retinue, then plucked the stone off the Sultan's body. Pedro's next conflict was with his brother, and in that fight he called on the help of England's Edward the Black Prince. As thanks, he gave him the ruby. Edward died a slow death, and others who inherited the stone would also die badly. Richard II was murdered. King Henry IV died slowly. The Tudors had disaster after disaster. Then Mary, Queen of Scots, was executed, and so was Charles I. When the monarchy was restored in 1660, the stone ended up as the centerpiece of the new imperial state crown, and it's now in the Tower of London. In the 1960s, a group of treasure hunters hit the jackpot when they discovered a stash of gold, jewelry, gems, tomb paintings, and marble sphinxes. The treasure was discovered in burial tombs thought to belong to a princess who lived around the 6th century BC. This was in an area of Turkey once known as Lydia. It's why the treasure is known as the Lydian Horde. Locals who were around when the treasure was excavated say those who entered the burial chambers were almost immediately overwhelmed with feelings of sickness and ultimately suffered some terrible consequences for removing the ancient items.
Death will come on swift wings to whomsoever opens this chest.
For instance, the museum director at the time was arrested for replacing pieces of the treasure with fakes and selling the real items off to cover his gambling debts. He blamed his entire misfortune on the curse. The curse was rumored to have started with the 7 men who did the digging. Those men are all said to have died in terrible ways or suffered misfortune. The Archaeological Museum in Usak now has all the pieces together again, and the hope is that the misfortune will now come to an end. There are 2 diamonds, the black and the white, that bear the name Orlov. According to legend, the white was stolen from the statue of an unnamed deity standing in a temple in southern India. It eventually found its way into the hands of Catherine the Great. She didn't return the affections of the man who gave it to her, but she did keep the diamond. However, it's the Black Orlov that's said to have been cursed. It's a stone that was supposedly stolen from a statue of Brahma in a Pondicherry temple. To add insult to injury, it was a monk who stole it. The Black Orlov wound up in Russia, where it belonged to Princess Nadia Boyhin Orlov. She reportedly fled Russia during the revolution and ultimately committed suicide in 1947. An interesting point to note is that the story also says that by this time the stone had passed out of her possession. Apparently, in 1932, a diamond dealer had brought it to the US. He sold the diamond and a week later leaped from the top of a skyscraper in Manhattan. The Black Orlov was linked to one more suicide, that of Princess Leonia Viktorianova Baryantinsky. She too had previously owned the stone. The story of the Regent Diamond starts in 1701 with a slave laboring in Indian mines. That's where the 410-carat diamond was discovered, and the man who found it decided he was going to keep it. So he did what any reasonable person would do. He sliced open his leg, stuck the diamond inside, and bandaged himself up. The unnamed slave then hopped a ship for Madras, where the captain figured out what was going on, killed the slave, and took the diamond. Though he did sell the diamond in Madras, after the sale he killed himself. The diamond merchant he sold it to was now holding stolen property, and everyone knew it. That led him to take a price that was a mere fraction of the diamond's actual worth from Thomas Pitt. Pitt got a great deal, but his reputation was then ruined by rumors about just how unethical he was. pit cut the diamond, selling the smaller stones off, and named the larger one the Pit Diamond. That was renamed the Regent when it ended up in France. The new owners were Louis XVI and Marie Antoinette, who, as any casual observer of history will know, died under less than ideal circumstances. From there, it was passed on to Napoleon, and it eventually made its way to the Louvre, where it has remained ever since. In 1849, a British viceroy wrote, "My motive was simply this, that it was more for the honor of the Queen that the Koh-I-Noor should be surrendered directly from the hand of the conquered prince into the hands of the sovereign who was his conqueror, than it should be presented to her as a gift." The stone in question, the Koh-I-Noor Diamond, would ultimately be set into the British royal crown. The gemstone, which was mined somewhere around the year 1100, was allegedly cursed by 1306. It was at that point when it was mentioned in a Hindu text that said, "Only God or a woman can wear it with impunity." A big part of the curse is the terrible circumstances around it. In 1739, the Persian ruler Nader Shah invaded Delhi. He slaughtered tens of thousands of people and left with so much loot that he needed 12,000 horses, 700 elephants, and 4,000 camels to carry it all. Among that loot was the diamond, which he removed from the peacock throne. For the record, the Delhi purple sapphire isn't actually a sapphire. It's an amethyst, and more than one person has called it deadly. It starts in India, where it was stolen from the Kanpur's temple of Indra. The man who stole it, a cavalryman named Colonel W. Ferris, soon lost everything, including his health. He passed the stone on to his son, who suffered the same fate before giving it to his friend. His friend committed suicide and in his will sent the stone back to the man who'd given it to him. By 1890, the amethyst ended up in the possession of Edward Heron Allen, and after his life took multiple turns for the worse, he tried to pawn it off onto yet another friend. She happened to be a singer who completely lost her voice after taking the stone. Heron Allen decided to try to get rid of it once and for all, so he chucked it into the Thames. But by sheer coincidence, the gem wound up back in his possession. Determined to keep it somewhere it couldn't hurt anyone, he had it sealed within 7 bank lockboxes. It was only years after his death that his daughter gave it to the Natural History Museum. In a strange coincidence, curator Richard Savin gets incredibly sick every time he's tried to attend a meeting of the Heron Allen Society. The pearl known as La Peregrina was discovered in the 16th century on the coast of Panama and presented to Ferdinand V. By the 1550s, it had been given to Mary I of England by her future husband Philip II. This is when the alleged curse begins. Mary suffered a few phantom pregnancies and her husband abandoned her, returning to Spain. Through the 17th century, the pearl bounced around France and Spain. During this time, it was worn by Philip IV at the rather unhappy marriage between Louis XIV and Maria Theresa. Eventually, it passed to Charles II, who went on to marry a woman who descended into depression and ultimately died young. Over the next centuries, there were many unhappy marriages the pearl was witness to. Charles IV's wife, Mary Louisa, bore at least one child that wasn't his. Napoleon's brother Joseph gave the pearl to one of the daughters of Empress Josephine. Josephine was then ordered to marry someone else and ultimately left that husband. Eventually, it was bought by Richard Burton and given as a gift to Elizabeth Taylor, whom he divorced twice.
I gave you the prize years ago, Martha. There isn't an abomination award going that you haven't won.
The Hope Diamond was reportedly stolen from a Hindu statue and condemned to curse anyone who owns it. Take Louis XIV, who bought it from the man who was said to have stolen it, then died of gangrene. Then there was Nicolas Fouquet, who Louis let wear the diamond occasionally. He fell from favor, was imprisoned, and may have been the inspiration for the Man in the Iron Mask. Then there was Louis XIV and Marie Antoinette, and we all know their end involved a guillotine. Before Marie met her maker, though, there was the nasty business of her confidante, Marie Louise of Savoy. She was clubbed, disemboweled, decapitated, and had her head paraded beneath Marie Antoinette's window. It was said to have claimed some ordinary people, too. A jeweler who recut the diamond was killed by a son, who then committed suicide. Then a Greek merchant drove his car off a cliff with himself, his wife, and their child inside. Evelyn Walsh McLean had it particularly rough, perhaps because she liked to let her dog wear the gem. She lost her mother-in-law, her 9-year-old son, her husband, and her 25-year-old daughter. She blamed the gem. Ultimately, she insured it for $155 and mailed it to the Smithsonian. Unfortunately for mailman James Todd, who dropped off the gem, he suffered 2 major accidents and lost his house in a fire. Jade has always had a special place in Chinese culture. It's long been thought to have magical qualities, and it's been carved into ritual objects and used in jewelry for centuries. Fast forward to the 21st century, and jade is still incredibly valuable. About half of Myanmar's gross domestic product is tied to the jade trade, but that's only part of the story. Around 300,000 jade pickers sift through the debris of large-scale mining industries. Even as they live and work in conditions where there's the constant threat of landslides and deadly diseases, drug addiction is rampant. So are violence and human rights abuses. Some landslides kill hundreds of miners at a time. The remaining pickers resume work afterward. Meanwhile, the Burmese military and Kachin rebels fight for control of all of it. One ethnic Kachin who's been caught in the middle of the war over Jade put it this way: "If there was no Jade, there would be no war in the Kachin state. We are living and sleeping on so much Jade on our earth, but Jade is Kachin's curse." There's one stone that has something of a bad reputation: the opal. Opals have such a bad image that there are jewelers in some countries, including some parts of southern Europe and the Middle East, who won't even sell them. At first, the ancient Romans believed opals to be good luck, but throughout medieval Europe, opals became the stone of choice for witches and warlocks. These magic users were thought to use them to focus their evil energies. Tough times for the opal continued, and during the Black Plague, it became associated with disease and death. The stone's image wasn't helped when Alfonso XII abandoned his queen for another woman. His ex sent his new bride an opal and gold ring for the couple's wedding, and the bride died just 2 months later. The ring was then passed to the king's grandmother, sister, and sister-in-law, all of whom died unexpectedly. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more grunge videos about your favorite stuff are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.